What is up, guys? It is your favorite host, Christopher Renne from Pints at the Round Table, The Chris Renne Show, and Chris R Talks on YouTube. Thanks for listening and thanks for engaging with me online. It's much appreciated, and I love all of your feedback. Make sure you follow me and the page online, on Instagram at Chris Renne MB and Twitter at Chris Renne MB. And then follow M-Basement Prod on Twitter and Instagram at M-Basement Prod, and like us on Facebook at Mom's Basement Productions. Thank you and enjoy the show.
What it do, baby? Yeah. What it do, baby? Yeah. What it do, baby? Yeah.
What it do, baby? Welcome in, everybody. That is the sound of Kawhi Leonard taking it all in at the Toronto Raptors championship parade, sitting next to Serge Ibaka. What it do, baby? This is episode 48 of the Chris Renne Show. That's 2 away from our bicentennial episode. So that's exciting. Almost to 100, 50, which is closer. We're getting there. We're getting it done. We keep podcasting. We keep having fun. So, congratulations to Canada. They did what no American team was capable of doing, and that was unseat the Warriors dynasty in 6 games. Congratulations. It took some terrible injuries to Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, regardless of who you follow. If you're rooting for an injury, you're a bad person, and you shouldn't really take joy in KD not having his Achilles healthy and Klay Thompson needing an ACL surgery. They are unfortunate injuries, but when you play in 5 straight finals, you're adding a lot of mileage to the tread of those tires. Injuries are going to happen. It's unfortunate. As I said, the Toronto Raptors took advantage of it, did what they had to do, got it done. They played who was in front of them, and they closed it out in 6 games. The last game in Oracle. They are NBA champions, and they will forever be remembered as such. But the NBA is a league that moves fast, and it's very star-driven. So when the Toronto Raptors win an NBA title, NBA fans and writers and other teams are ready to get moving forward. The Los Angeles Lakers made it official. They traded for Anthony Davis and were able to get that long-needed superstar teammate for LeBron James. Rob Pelinka did it. That guy did it. Rob Lowe, lookalike Rob Pelinka, the former agent of Kobe Bryant, the guy who forced Magic out, the guy who played the Game of Thrones, much like Littlefinger, who is now in charge of the Lakers, got LeBron a teammate. It took 5 years of draft capital to do it. Is it a lot? Only time will tell. It won't give you much leeway for a future trade to get another star, so that's a big question. Some people are wondering why I waited till today to do this show, and rather than be reactionary like everyone else, I sort of wanted to see where the stories were going, what other news was going to come out as it went, and as such, a lot did come out. There's some other free agent stuff this is going to affect. We're going to be talking about what comes next for the Lakers. We're going to be talking about the Pelicans Haul. And we're going to say, I'll be honest, I don't usually do this, but I'll talk about who won the trade and some of the dumbest takes I've seen on sports discussion shows over the last couple days. There's 2 topics of conversation that I've seen on TV that have just been so absurdly stupid that I need to mention them on here. To discredit the idea that these are actual conversations that were had or posts on social media that were posted. So what's next for the Lakers? Let's just start there because I think that's the biggest question. Now that they have Anthony Davis, now that they have LeBron James, What's next? Let's get started with what they had to trade. The Pelicans' haul of Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Josh Hart alone is a pretty decent haul. Then you throw in the number 4 pick in 2019. Picks 8 through 30, protected 2021 pick, and unprotected 2022 if that doesn't work out. Pick swap rights in 2023, unprotected 2024, with a right to defer to 2025 if the draft pick isn't good enough. Well, if we do some basic math in the 2019-2020 season, LeBron is going to be 35 years old. He's not getting any younger. So, in 2024 or 2025, for that draft, LeBron will be pushing 40. So that just gives you a little bit of side-by-side comparison to where these draft picks will be in relation to LeBron James's age, which is important to note because when you think about it, the Lakers really gave up their prospective future for a more concrete future that comes with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So giving up the 5 years or so of draft capital is insane in a lot of cases. But when you trade for the star player, it's usually more beneficial for that team in the near future. And if Anthony Davis remains in LA after that, because by the time LeBron is 39 years old and done, Anthony Davis will be just in the middle or the twilight years of his true athletic prime at 31, 32 years old, which then the Lakers will be able to revamp and retool their roster without these draft picks because they'll have cap space and money and draft picks coming in the future. Draft picks in the NBA to me have never been as important as draft picks in other sports, and if you really think about draft picks in the NBA, I've seen this said a lot over the last couple of weeks, is a draft pick, you get 1 or 2 good players a draft, and when you give up draft picks, you're not really giving up much to me these days, because you look at some of the players that have been taken high in the draft that haven't really turned into many things. Like you look at Devin Booker, who's a great player, but has that really translated to wins? You look at players like Nikolai Jokic who were taken later, and you could probably steal one of those picks away in a player trade and get one of those guys. It doesn't happen. Draymond Green was a second-round pick. There's a lot of aspects that go into the draft, and like you look at the best player in the NBA Finals in Kawhi Leonard, he wasn't like a super significant prospect in the draft he was part of. So the NBA draft has a lot of hits and misses. And like for every LeBron James, there's a Darko Milicic. For every Anthony Davis, there's a Kyrie Irving, One ended up winning a title because LeBron came back. The other has struggled to carry a franchise. That's just how the NBA works. It's hard to win in the league without other stars, which is what the Lakers ended up getting in Anthony Davis. Giving up 5 years of draft capital to have a sure thing in Anthony Davis, who last year missed, I want to say, 24 games, but a lot of those were healthy scratches because of the unsure nature of his relationship to the team. It became detrimental to play him, so they started saying he was hurt and resting him because there was no point in having him there. So when we look at it, Rob Pelinka, like I said, got the job done. Now with $23.2 million, they don't have enough money to bring in a max player. But as I talked about last week on episode 47, there's other free agents you got to look for. And if you wait and are patient and you see what happens in free agency, players like Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams could lose value or gain value. You don't know. There's players like Bogdan Bogdanovic who are going to, or Bojan Bogdanovic, who are going to probably get more money than they should. Chris Middleton, a guy I thought the Lakers should really go after, is probably going to get more money than he should, as well as Tobias Harris. But then you get a guy like Harrison Barnes who optioned out, and if he doesn't get the money he wants, he could probably sign a 1-year, $10 million deal, be a good wing player. Then you have Harrison Barnes, Kyle Kuzma, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis, 4 really high-functioning NBA players. You keep looking at the roster. You fill that out with the Patrick Beverley, who's not a bad spot-up shooter. He doesn't need the ball, but he can run the offense, That's a pretty solid starting 5, but you still need to be able to spread around some money to get a little bit more depth on the bench. Now, if they find a way to create more cap space, I think you try to do that even if it means you don't sign another max free agent. Because as much as I like Kemba, I was reading the other day that he was a very successful player, but he had one of the highest usage rates in the NBA throughout it. So his statistics were in part due to his extremely high usage rate. I think there's a lot of ways the Lakers can go, and this is where we're truly going to see if Rob Pelinka's actually a good GM. And if he makes this work, he could end up being a great general manager. So I think there's a lot of ways and a lot of directions the Lakers can go from here. And that leads me into who won this trade. Right now, the Lakers absolutely have this trade won. I don't care about the draft capital. I don't care about that. So I'm going to hit on why they won. First off, Lonzo is going to be a good player if he can stay healthy. Brandon Ingram's going to be a solid pro if he can stay healthy. And Josh Hart's always going to be a solid rotation guy. The Pelicans ended up getting depth and expanding a roster that's going to fit pretty well around Zion Williamson. Ingram's not a dominant ball handler. Lonzo is. Zion doesn't need the ball to play. Josh Hart's really good off the bench and could end up being a guy in the sixth man of the year conversation later in his career. I think that's his ceiling. But what are the two biggest issues with Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram? They're often hurt. Lonzo Ball hasn't played a full season of games yet combined over his last 2 years. Brandon Ingram always tends to end up having something seriously go wrong with his body. Not to mention he's a Duke player, and those guys work out, 1 in 15, 1 in 20 times. That's the history. We'll know a lot more about their pick swaps and stuff soon, but with that 1 in 4 pick, they're going to be able to add some really good players right away. I think as the Lakers, I'd even think about trying to get more picks for that 4th pick. The Pelicans. And moving backwards and getting like the 8th and 10th pick to try to fill out more with some role players. Because you already have a starting point guard. You already have Drew Holiday. You already have Zion Williamson penciled in as the number 1 pick, who's a power forward, small forward hybrid, who can defend the 5 in small ball situations. Then you get Brandon Ingram, who's a starting small forward. You get a center in the free agency like Brook Lopez. And that's a really good roster. I do think the Pelicans can win this trade, but are they a championship level roster? No, absolutely not. They're too young. And that's the difference between youth and experience. A 26-year-old Anthony Davis is worth 3 players of high ceiling, high floors, or low floors when it comes to a trade. So in the moment, the Lakers absolutely won the trade, and it's mostly because they have 2 stars that made the Lakers capable of winning an NBA championship. That leads me to the next topic of conversation, the Las Vegas odds. So the Los Angeles Lakers are in a lot of places the odds-on favorite to win the NBA title next year, and that's before they even fill out their roster. I think that's honestly a way of Vegas making some easy money on people right now. because right now the Lakers don't have a championship roster at all, and much moreover do not really even have a roster. They have, I think, 5 players under contract currently, which is not a lot. They're going to have to get some guns for hire like last year. I think there's a lot of culture guys around that are free agents that you'll hear the Lakers talking about once they make their big moves. It's going to be a typical LeBron roster. It's going to be very top-heavy, and he's going to be relied on to make the bench better. I wouldn't bet this right now. I honestly think the best bet was before they signed Anthony Davis or traded for him, because I think realistically that was going to happen, whether it be now or in 3 or 4 months. But at this moment in time, the draft picks the Lakers had and the young players they had their highest value they were going to have. And the Pelicans also, Anthony Davis, if he wasn't going to play again, was going to have zero value to anybody besides the Lakers, because they were the only team he was going to stay at. So I don't think it's a good bet now. I think when you bet for a futures bet like that for an NBA championship, it needs to be either a sure thing, which it's not right now, or it needs to be odds that can really end up being great odds if something happens in the future, as in trading for Anthony Davis. So if you took advantage of the Lakers' odds prior, say, 2-3 weeks ago after the offseason ended, it was probably a better bet. Right now, it's a good bet. I mean, if you bet $100, you're going to make $250. So that's cool. Or, yeah. I think that's a good bet. I mean, I don't think it's a great bet. I don't think it's a bet that you should really make right now, not knowing their roster, but it's only going to get worse if you're looking to make big money off of it. So I think another person who needs to be highlighted here, and I already shouted him out on Twitter, was Rich Paul. He got a lot of hate over the last couple months trying to get Anthony Davis where Anthony Davis wanted to be. But he got the job done. He showed why he's one of the league's premier agents, and he's going to get a lot of new clients because of it. LeBron and Clutch Sports once again worked together to make it happen. And the true way to define if either team wins this trade, thanks to Rich Paul, is if a title or two is won. If the Lakers win 2 titles, this trade was a win. It's exactly what they wanted. If the Pelicans end up winning a title 5-10 years down the road, it's exactly what they wanted. So, we'll see. I think both teams could end up winning this trade. I think it was a good trade for both sides. I think the Lakers should have been a little smarter with the money, but I think at the end of the day, they probably were and knew this was probably just the only true option for them. So, that's it on that. Besides these dumb-ass conversations that people had, this ridiculous stats conversations section. So, I've seen a lot of conversations stating that this is the greatest NBA duo to ever play together. And don't get me wrong, it's a great one. But can you really rate an NBA duo before they play together, before they're on the same team, before they have to go through it together? I don't think so. I think that's absolutely an absurd idea to do. So instead, I'm going to give you some of the best NBA duos ever, and then I'm going to give you a big reason on why this NBA duo doesn't fit on that list yet, and may never. So the first one on the list is another Lakers duo, Magic and Kareem. They won 5 titles. Magic Johnson and Kareem are arguably 2 of the 5 best players in NBA history. My top 5 definitely includes both of them. If I include centers on the list, I think you got to go with LeBron, Michael, Magic, Kareem, and then anyone you want at 5. A lot of people put Kobe in their top 5. I really predominantly have to rethink my list. I think it changes pretty sporadically as I learn new information. I'm a big believer that there's a lot. The top 5 is hard. The top 3 is easy. I really do believe hard and full that it is Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Magic Johnson. I think Magic Johnson changed the way basketball is played. I think Michael Jordan changed the way basketball was played. I think LeBron James mastered the sport of basketball. There's arguments for a lot of players, but those three I think are unarguable, and then you can go on and make your other list for the rest of them. There's a lot of ways to look at it. Talent, Wilt Chamberlain could be a top 5 player for just going on talent. Records, dynasty, Bill Russell can be a top 5 player if you think of it that way. And you got players just to go up and down the list. Kobe won 5 rings. Shaq was the most dominant player of all time. In his prime, he had the highest peak of anybody. So it's really hard to do a top 5, but I think the top 3 are pretty solidified. So Magic, Kareem. Then you have, this one can be seen as a trio or duo, depending on how you want to look at who was the main wingman at the time. So you got Bird and Parrish or Bird and McHale. So that was the Celtics in the 80s, the ones I truly love watching old Larry Bird highlights. That dude just knocked down jumpers and got wherever he wanted to go on a court while not looking like the most athletic guy. His McDonald's commercial will always be iconic, and I'll love it. So that was a great duo / trio. They really did win quite a bit. This one is a pretty underrated one, in my opinion. I don't think many people talk about this one in the grand scheme of things. This guy named Michael Jordan and his sidekick, Scottie Pippen. This is definitely one of the most underappreciated duos in NBA history. If you haven't heard of them, you should go look them up. You should go watch some of their highlights. You'll see some of the accolades they accomplished, because I think people often forget how good Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen were together. And I don't think any of them really give them the true respect they deserve in the GOAT conversation as the greatest duo of all time. So when you're thinking of top NBA duos, this one has to be on your list. I know I was extremely sarcastic right there. But Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, if you don't have them, I mean, they won 6 titles. They were all NBA defensive players, all NBA first team players almost annually. The next one, Shaq and Kobe. So you get Shaq, you get Kobe. At the beginning, it was a Shaq-dominated team, and at the end, it was a true duo. The first 3 titles, the first 2 Shaq carried. The third one was when, they sort of became true wingmen. Shaq went on to have 4 titles. Kobe went on to have 5, so they had success without each other. But at the time, I do think they needed each other to truly win it. And when they made their own dream team with Shaq, Gary Payton, Kobe, and one other guy, slipped my brain, doesn't matter. It's about the duo. So Shaq and Kobe, you have the most dominated player, and Michael Jordan light. Kobe Bryant emulated everything Michael Jordan did, just not to the same level of Michael Jordan. And Shaq, like I said previously, was the most dominant player at his peak, which was the end of the Magic to that final third NBA Finals. He's the guy who could get 46 and have like 26 rebounds. I don't think we're ever going to see a player like that again in the NBA for 2 reasons. It doesn't make really much sense defensively with how much people rely on the three-pointer. And it doesn't really make much sense offensively because how much time it took for Shaq to work and get on the post and have the ball whip around to get to him on a low block. That's just not the way basketball is played anymore. It's probably not going to be the way it's ever played again. So, as time will tell, that one was the most dominating duo of an post-Jordan era. It happened right after. So, I mean, duos were in good hands. Then, I think, at its peak, one of the most unstoppable teams in basketball history was led by a duo of 2 top 5 NBA players in their time, in Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. I think you look at Kevin Durant, you look at Steph Curry. Steph Curry is one of those polarizing players. A lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him. I am a well-known Steph hater, but I do respect the changes he made to the game. Because now I don't even have to really dribble a basketball, and I can take a shot from the corner, and it's just as if people like me taking that shot more than a mid-range jumper now. So that excites me. It changed my life. It made my basketball game easier. And it honestly made people like what I was doing on a basketball court. Everyone's like, oh, stop taking threes. I'm like, dude, they add up faster. I learned how to do that in 2K, and I'd be beating teams in 2K like 133 to like 60. I used to play with the Warriors, and it would annoy my brothers when that early Steph Curry, because he had just such a high 3-point rating in the video game. And now you get KD, one of the most unstoppable offensive weapons in all of sports history, not just basketball. He's a 6'11 guy who can shoot from almost anywhere on the court, from way outside. You know the guy, Kevin Durant. Unfortunately, Kevin Durant tore his Achilles, and this may be the last time we ever see this duo at full strength. But the 2 years they were together, they were almost an unbeatable team when they were really actually trying, as you can tell by their 8-1 record against the Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. A team who beat the Warriors and came back from down 3-1 years before. And that leads me into my last duo, LeBron and Dwayne Wade. LeBron and Dwayne Wade won 2 titles together. In 4 years, they went to 4 finals. They lost to a Mavericks team that was a great team. The Heat weren't a great team yet. They had a bunch of great players but weren't a great team. And then they lost to the Spurs, once again a great team, when the health of Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh sort of started deteriorating. And the bench and stuff just weren't as deep as you needed them to be for that team to win against a well-rounded 7 or 8 deep San Antonio Spurs team. So you look at those duos, what do they all have in common? There's something I mentioned with every single one of them. Every single player on that list is either a Hall of Famer or a future Hall of Famer, no question. I think Anthony Davis fits in that future Hall of Famer category even without winning a title. He's just one of those talents who are so polarizing and such a statistical anomaly in the sport that you really can't discredit that. I think Anthony Davis, when healthy and when playing up to his potential as a top 5 player in the league, it wasn't long ago, I think 2 years ago, where people were arguing that he was number 2 to LeBron. It was an argument between LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard as who the best player in the league was. Anthony Davis is arguably the most talented teammate LeBron's played with, but I'd even honestly right now put LeBron and Kevin Love as a better duo, because LeBron and Kevin Love have actually been on the floor together. LeBron and Kevin Love have been to a title together. 3, actually. And that being said, until Anthony Davis accomplishes something with LeBron, I don't think you can put him on a list as a top NBA duo. And that's why it's such a stupid argument. Because how can they be a top NBA duo of all time when they have never played together? Are they a top 2 NBA collection of talent? Yeah, absolutely. But are they a top 2 duo? No. What, Bird, Parrish, and McHale, 3 rings? Magic and Kareem, 5. LeBron and Wade, 2. KD, Steph, 2. Shaq and Kobe, 3. It's just, and there's more duos that were great. What, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker. Tim Duncan, David Robinson. There's one right there. Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, you just look at some of these duos throughout history. There's a lot of great ones. Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, or Joe Dumars, depending on who you want to look at as his true wingman. It was just a good, well-rounded team. But there's 2 stars. And there's a lot of great ones that need to go checked first before you can really anoint this one as truly one of the greatest duos of all time. And when you look at his greatest teammates ever, because everyone's already saying Anthony Davis is his greatest teammate ever, LeBron, Kyrie got a ring. LeBron and Kevin Love got a ring, and LeBron and Wade got 2 rings. LeBron and Bosh got 2 rings. They averaged 53.3 points per game combined last year. They didn't play together last year, so how can they average that together? The way it was worded, I will retweet the tweet. It's one of the worst tweets I've ever seen by anyone. Yeah, I can say that if LeBron and KD played together last year, they averaged 56 points. Whoop-de-doo. It means nothing. They haven't played together yet. Lastly, LeVar Ball needs to be crossed off the list. Yes, he's erratic. Yes, he says some funny stuff. But oftentimes he's way too disrespectful to show hosts that you need to just discredit this guy and not let him have a platform. If you don't have a problem with what he said to Molly on First Take, you probably need to reevaluate yourself. It's a professional environment, and if anyone said that to another employee in any workplace, they'd probably be reprimanded and suspended. But since LeVar Ball is his own guy, he won't have any punishment for it. And as long as people keep laughing at it, it's going to continue to happen. I saw Stephen A's look. I saw Max Kellerman's look. I saw Molly's look. They were all very uncomfortable. And I can almost guarantee that Jalen Rose, Molly Curum's husband, was not happy about that. Continuing forward with the NBA, the National Basketball Association. You know, there's a lot of free agent talk going on. I'm going to actually do a Chris R. quick hits on these, give some quick opinions on the free agency stuff I've been hearing and been seeing as I watch all the sports stuff I watch all day. So, free agent talk. Kawhi Leonard, an enigma. Obviously, he's been celebrating. He was asked if he was going to stay in Toronto. He did not respond to that question the way any fan would truly want. Do I think, in a lot of ways, that he's already gone? No, I really don't know. I don't know what Kawhi Leonard wants. He won a title with a pretty well-together, well-constructed roster in Toronto, a place that truly adores him and loves him prior to even winning it. You know, they trade away a homegrown franchise talent in DeMar DeRozan, and he comes in and delivers exactly the reason why they traded for him. So you go through it and you listen to everyone talk, and everyone prior to the playoffs was said, Kawhi Leonard to Los Angeles is a for sure thing. He's going to the Clippers. I don't know if that's 100% true anymore, and if I was honestly weighing the options, I'd be 50-50. Nick Nurse proved he could win a championship. Doc Rivers won a championship. You're going to have to do some roster reconstruction in Los Angeles Clippers. In Los Angeles with the Clippers. In Toronto, pretty much everything stays intact. Yes, you got to re-sign Kyle Lowry, but that was going to be something you had to do anyways. Yes, you're going to have to re-sign some of these other players, and some other players are going to have to walk. But the Toronto Raptors rebuild is going to be a lot quicker than the Clippers rebuild. You're not going to have to rebuild culture. You're already going to have an understanding with each other. And if winning is everything to Kawhi, and we saw his New Balance deal, and yes, the Clippers are great, but do they have that same magnetism as a whole country of the Toronto Raptors do? I don't think so. The only thing I think being in Toronto affects is the local television, and I think the NBA League Pass struggles with the Canadian channels. I've heard rumors about that. I've never actually really needed to watch a local market Toronto Raptors game, so I wouldn't know. But Kawhi is a great player, and Kawhi is going to make either team, whether it be the Raptors or Clippers, an instant NBA title contender. There's not many players with that power. I think you look at it, it's LeBron, it's Kevin Durant, and it's Kawhi. Those are the three players capable of doing that. I really think he's already the greatest gun for hire of all time. When you win a title in two places, it's pretty amazing. I think that was Kyrie Irving's goal. And if he goes on and goes to a third place and wins a title, it's no doubt he's the greatest gun for hire ever. He's the greatest El Bandito of the NBA. And he's the greatest outlaw that's ever been in basketball. I think if I had to make a prediction now, I'm honestly leaning a little Toronto. I think it's like 60-40. I think after the parade subsides, we're going to start hearing some rumors from Uncle Dennis and crew about where he intends on going. But we've got a little bit till that day, the NBA free agency day in the beginning of July, before any of this really takes place. How is he going to reveal it? I don't know. I've already got my Boardman Gets Paid shirt ordered, and I already have my Fun Guy New Balance shirt ordered. So Kawhi Leonard and the whole marketing campaign of New Balance is working. Their stuff looks cool, it looks fun, and I think his shoes have sold extremely well and have had a lot of value. So when they release in December, I really do think they're going to do well. They look comfortable. I think they look cool. I think the limited release really got people excited about them. And I think Kawhi doesn't need Los Angeles to be this world-renowned superstar. I think he is capable of it in an international city like Toronto. It's not like an NBA team where you just have a market behind you. Yes, San Antonio is a small market. I actually think Toronto is a better market for marketing than anyone believes. Half the NBA players do most of their marketing in China. So I don't really think it matters where he plays as long as it's Toronto or Los Angeles. I think that's almost a lock. If he ends up in New York or somewhere else, that would be the craziest thing to happen in NBA free agency, and I really think I am truly leaning Toronto 60-40 right now. I'll be more bold in my prediction as that free agency date approaches. But until then, it's just going to be fun to watch his memes come out. The next one on the list is another guy with a name that starts with a K, Kyrie Irving. So the most recent news is he has officially fully ghosted the Boston Celtics. What it's looking like is he's probably going to the Brooklyn Nets. I don't think if he goes to the Nets, I don't think he'll ever win a championship in his life. I really don't. Is it good for his star? Yeah, I think being in New York City is better than being in Boston for a person who wants to be a celebrity. That sucks for D'Angelo Russell. Go Bucks. But he is truly just a weird guy. I think he's an unpredictable human being. I don't think he's going to the Knicks. I think if the Lakers get max money, I'd still try really hard to get Kyrie Irving because I think with LeBron, Kyle Kuzma, Anthony Davis, and Kyrie Irving, the Lakers really do win the championship next year. I don't think Kyrie's going to be willing to play the third fiddle. He was barely willing to play the second fiddle. I've never understood the term of playing fiddle to someone. I don't know why it wasn't like playing the second clarinet or the third clarinet in a band because I think that makes a lot more sense. They're more band instruments, and I think first, second, and third relate more to those ones. The third violin, the second violin, the third cello. But that's an argument for a different day. I really, truly don't think he'll ever win again if he goes to Brooklyn. I don't think he has it in him to be the leader that it takes to lead a team to the promised land. You saw what happened with the Celtics. It fell apart. If he learns and grows from those issues that he had as a leader there, I mean, you can see him being a perennial playoff team, but unless they get a superstar in free agency in the next couple of years, they're probably not going to be able to get it done, and that's just a fact. So that moves me. I'm only going to talk about two more today because these are honestly the only other two big stories that came out that weren't AD to the Lakers, Kawhi's free agency talk, and Kyrie Irving ghosting the Celtics. But Al Horford opted out of his Celtics contract, which was honestly a big surprise for me. He did not accept the player option he had and has opted to become an NBA free agent. Honestly, if I'm the Celtics, you got to pay the man. Over the last, I want to say 5 seasons, or as long as Al Horford's been there, he's been the most valuable Celtics player. He's a guy who's like 16, 8, 6, and 3. So he gets all the stats you need from a big man. He passes the ball. a lot of the time when Kyrie was hurt, the offense was running through him. I think when you really look into it, the Celtics are a mess right now. And Danny Ainge is going to say a bunch of stuff about how close they were to landing at Anthony Davis, how close they were to keeping Kyrie. It's all going to come out in this way that Danny Ainge wants it to come out, because Danny Ainge is about Danny Ainge and protecting his legacy. They had a bunch of opportunities. They had an opportunity to go get Kawhi Leonard. They could have had that same one-year rental, and if they rented him 1 year, they would have won an NBA title. That's just a fact. Now, they're back in cap space mode. They're going to have to take on some dead contracts for draft picks. They're going to continue building. Jason Tatum, I think, is going to be a 25-5 guy next year. I think he'll have a good year around that sort of mark. I don't think they have a point guard. Terry Rozier, I think he'll get exposed defensively through an 82-game season. I think he's an average point guard at best. I think his role off the bench suits him perfectly, and I think as a spot starter, he's fine because of his offensive versatility as a scorer. But as a leader of the team, I don't really see it. So Marcus Smart, offensively, the opposite of Terry Rozier, just a very good defensive player, not a very thick arsenal of offensive moves. Kind of plays very aggressively and very out of control, sort of Tasmanian devilish. So I really, truly think you got to pay Al Horford because he brings a control to that roster. And I don't think Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum or Terry Rozier or Marcus Smart are good enough to get a team to the playoffs by themselves. And you need that veteran presence in Al Horford to make it happen. Horford makes any team he plays on better. He made the Hawks better. He made the Celtics better. Al Horford's a really, really good basketball player that's really underappreciated because he doesn't do it sexy. He doesn't jump out the gym. He's not a ball is life mixtape type of guy. You're not going to see him at the Drew League. He's a guy from the Dominican Republic, if I remember correctly, who just loves playing basketball and is extremely fundamentally sound. So when you look at Al Horford, it's easy to see why people aren't the biggest fans of him, but he's a 5-time All-Star. He's an All-NBA third-team guy. He's an All-Defensive NBA second-team guy. He's continued to get better on that side of the floor from a positioning standpoint, and I think that has to be such an underrated aspect of his game. And I think if you're a young team with some really good pieces, I think he's a guy who can really make you better. So if I'm the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis, you need this guy who's willing to just score a couple points here and there, hit a mid-range jumper, hit a corner three, make the passes, get the rebounds, do some dirty work on the defensive end to really set the tone and form an identity on your roster. You look at the Clippers, if they don't land Kawhi, I think adding Al Horford to the mix with the players they already have would be a really smart move. I think he's a player Doc Rivers can utilize pretty well. And once again, he'll keep an identity with you, and he'll merge to the role you need him to. If you need him to score 20, he can do it. He showed capable of doing that when he played for the Hawks. If you need him to score less and be more of a distributor, he showed he can do it. Look what he did with the Celtics and, once again, the Hawks. I really like Al Horford. If he could somehow manage to find his way to the Lakers on the cheap, that would be one of the best moves that could possibly happen for him. I'd take him on the Cavs with the young roster we have. I think you really look at it. You can really just use him in so many different ways. I think he's such an underrated player. And I've made a lot of fun of him over the years in the games the Cavs have played against the Hawks, the games the Cavs have played against the Celtics. But I'd take him on my team. The last big news I'd have to say is Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes is a veteran shooter. We all know him as a guy who went so ice cold when they were up 3-1 that people blame him for losing the NBA Finals and blowing a 3-1 lead. He was part of that team. He was the victim of circumstance that came with Kevin Durant, and he was the odd man out. So my take with him is any team would be glad to have him, but not for the price he's going to entail. So I think the market is going to be really helpful for him or really hurt him. If shooters are getting paid extremely high like they were a couple free agencies ago when the cap exploded, I really think contract in the range of 20 to 25 million is not out of the picture. But I think you could see his value coming down to 10 to 15 million. I think he's a J.J. Redick with better ball handling skills. I think he's a decent defender. I think he's a pretty versatile player. But I don't think he's special enough to warrant a max contract like he did when he got traded to the Mavericks. It's weird how far away that feels now. But I think any team would be lucky if they need a shooter to add him. He's very similar to me. He's a better Danny Green is what I'd say. He's a more versatile Danny Green because of his... He's a decent ball handler. He's not great. I think a good thing was a lot of Warriors fans were calling him a poor man's Kevin Durant, and you could really see the difference when you got the real thing in the NBA Finals. But he's a player who could really fit as a third or fourth option on an NBA championship level team. But a fourth option doesn't get paid max money. So we'll see with him. I think that's a wait-and-see one. I really have no idea where he's going to go. We're going to actually have to really wait to see how the market plays out with the top two tiers of free agents. I'd actually put Harrison Barnes in the bottom half of that second tier. So we'll see as it goes. I think NBA free agency is more exciting than the draft, which is on tonight. I don't really have any predictions for the draft. I don't really care much about the draft, the NBA draft. Now that the Anthony Davis trade happened, I don't really think there's any reason to look at the draft. So, moving forward, we're going to actually go into some NFL conversation. The most recent Aaron Rodgers news is not pretty if you're an optimistic Packers fan. Aaron Rodgers is already beefing with his new coach, Matt LaFleur. I'm going to read the full quotation to you. So Aaron Rodgers said, "It's a conversation in progress. I don't think you want to ask me to turn off 11 years of recognizing defenses. We have a number of check with me's and line of scrimmage stuff. It's just the other stuff that really not many people in this league can do. And that's not like a humble brag or anything. That's just a fact, bro. There aren't many people that can do at the line of scrimmage what I've done for the years. I mean, obviously Tommy can do it, no doubt. Peyton could do it back in his day. Drew Brees can do it. Patrick Mahomes will be able to do it. Ben has called the 2-minute for years. There are a few of us who've just done it. It's kind of a second nature, and that's just the icing on the cake for what I can do in this offense." I really like what Aaron Rodgers said, and his confidence has always been one of my favorite characteristics of him. But I do think that can rub a lot of people the wrong way, and he did not have to go to the media for this. A lot of the issues that stemmed with Mike McCarthy were passive-aggressive takes to the media about play calling and stuff along those lines. I think this can go two ways. The first way being Aaron Rodgers will continue to kill coaches, and his legacy will be the most talented quarterback who did not meet the expectations that were set out for him from the get-go when he took over for Brett Favre. I think, in all honesty, he won the first Super Bowl. Hasn't really won in the playoffs that much since. I think even that legacy of most talented quarterback who did not meet the expectations might fall off if Patrick Mahomes is who we thought is going to be, who we think he is going to be. I think the other way it can go is pretty obvious as well. He and LaFleur can grow from this, and this ends up being a good pairing. I'm going to go with recent history. I don't think this is a good start. And I think if this team starts off in a rough patch, 1-2, 1-3, I don't think this pairing is going to last much longer than a year. I think in a lot of ways, Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James are similar in that way where they did come from different places. Aaron Rodgers was always overlooked. LeBron James was always, I have to do it my way to get this thing done because that's how he got to where he is. Both of them, though, do it their way. And both of them are arguably the most talented players in their leagues. So when you look at them and you look at the way they talk to their coaches, they do fully believe, well and above, that they know more than their coaches. I think LeBron might struggle with Frank Vogel. I think recent history shows that star players can really control the narrative with coaches. And I think a lot of what happens in the future is up to Aaron Rodgers. I think Matt LaFleur is one of those guys who got a job because of his offensive acumen. I think when you look at his history with Kyle Shanahan, he's going to be creative offensively. But I do know that Aaron Rodgers is at his best when it's backyard football, when he's scrambling around and finding a guy deep downfield off platform, throwing it deep. I think that's a very sort of common thing you've seen with the last two Packers quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers didn't want to be like Brett Favre, but he very much is exactly like Brett Favre right now. I think Mike McCarthy was a really good coach, and I think he ran him out of the building, and I think now he's got a young guy who's going to want to do things his way, and I think that can lead to some beef. I think you needed to hire a more mature coach, a more respected coach than Matt LaFleur to appease Aaron Rodgers. You chose not to, Green Bay. And I think Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur are going to battle for control, much like Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers did. I don't think it's looking good. I really think you should pencil in the Bears as AFC North champions. I think you should pencil in the Vikings as second place. And I think the Packers will probably once again be a third place team. So I think with these growing problems in Green Bay already, it's just looking out and up, and the Patriots are probably going to win another Super Bowl. That's just a joke, but I think in reality, this is not off to a good start, and I think it's very similar to what a lot of people were saying about LeBron not showing up to his exit interview and LeBron not being at the opening press conference with Frank Vogel. I think there was a lot of chance to show goodwill to the new coach, show belief in the good coach, and show the media that you are capable of working with someone. And for another quick, this was actually supposed to be my game of the day. Top 5 recent coach-player disputes. Chris R's game of the day. So recently, top 5 recent coach-player disputes. The first one on my list is Brady and Belichick. So, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick had a power struggle with Jimmy Garoppolo. Tom Brady did like Jimmy Garoppolo, called him his wolf pack. Bill Belichick really liked Jimmy Garoppolo and felt he can win with him. Robert Kraft was on Tom Brady's side, and Tom Brady has his TB12 stuff. He wanted Alex Guerrero in the locker room. He wanted all that. And Bill Belichick wanted control, and he felt like if Alex Guerrero was on the sideline, he was losing it. So Bill Belichick banned Alex Guerrero from the field, yada, yada, yada. We all know how it worked out. Alex Guerrero got a Super Bowl ring. That's what's important. But in reality, they ended up coming back, getting over it, winning a Super Bowl, like I predicted. Not to humble brag. The next one, LeBron and David Blatt. LeBron got David Blatt out. The Cavaliers ended up hiring Tyronn Lue and going on to winning an NBA title. On this list, Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy. That's recent. I think it was a big beef. I think it lasted 4 or 5 years. I think they've had a lot of problems. And I think in reality, this beef was detrimental to Aaron Rodgers' career rather than buying in and trying to be a team player. He had to win these little cockfights or pissing contests, and he ended up being detrimentally affecting his career and his optics. The next one, Kawhi and Greg Popovich. This one worked out for someone and not the other. The Spurs are a good team, and Popovich is always going to have them in playoff contention. But Kawhi Leonard left. Kawhi Leonard proved to the Spurs who he was. And Kawhi Leonard ended up being correct about his view. He didn't trust the Spurs. He felt the doctors were misleading him. Look what happened in Golden State when the doctors mislead someone. You tear your Achilles, you get hurt worse. He goes to the Raptors. They care for him. They don't make fun of him for his injury. They don't call him soft. You know, he makes it. He gets there, and he ends up playing for the Raptors and winning a title. So in this one, Kawhi Leonard did win the beef against Greg Popovich, and it happened pretty fast. I don't think Greg Popovich regrets it. I think Greg Popovich has nothing to prove to anyone. But I do think losing Kawhi the way he did was pretty rough. The last one is LeBron versus Luke Walton, and that one is recent. We'll see how that one goes. Luke Walton got fired, then accused of sexual assault. So I think the Lakers dodged a little bit of a bullet on that one by letting him go the time they did. I think LeBron was right. I don't think the Lakers would really have a chance to win a title with Luke Walton. I don't think he has a personality to work with LeBron. I think he's going to be a good coach as he grows into it, but he's still too young and too close to the players and age that LeBron played with him, and Luke Walton was a guy who never really played much. He was at the end of the bench, and that's really hard for a guy to walk into a locker room and respect. So if you're LeBron James, obviously. For the young guys, I think he was a perfect coach, but it's not that anymore. It's championship time. So those are my top 5 recent coach-player disputes. We're going to wrap this thing up pretty fast. I've got 2 more segments. The best, worst thing I saw. James Franklin, the best coach in the Big Ten, 1-9 versus top 10 teams. Has beat Ohio State once. Gets smoked by Michigan every time they're on a roll. Struggles against Michigan State. James Franklin's a good coach. I think he's struggling in Penn State. I think he'll be in the NFL next year. That's my prediction, and he is not the best coach in the Big Ten. I think in order right now, I'd say Mike D'Antonio's the best coach. Then I'd have to probably put Pat Fitzgerald number 2. And then, honestly, Ryan Day's 3-0 as a coach, so I'm going to put him. Then Harbaugh. Then probably Franklin, I'd want to say. Did I forget a major school? Oh, Kirk Ferentz is above Franklin, too. And then yeah, so I think as of now, James Franklin is the 5th or 6th best coach in the Big Ten. I think he's right around where Paul Chryst is. I think you put Kirk Ferentz in front of him because of longevity. I think you put Jim Harbaugh in front of him because he's just a better version of what James Franklin is. Yes, James Franklin's won a Big Ten title. I still think Jim Harbaugh is a better coach. Then you move down, and then I think Ryan Day is going to be a better coach than those two. And then number 2, Pat Fitzgerald does the most with the less in the country. And Mark D'Antonio is one of the best coaches at a program that doesn't really get many big-time recruits. And he, every once in a while, really gets Michigan State. I mean, he's played in the playoff. I think a lot of people forget how good D'Antonio actually is. So, in reality, that was just a bull-faced lie. So that leads me into my last thing, and this is going to start being not a weekly thing, but when something catches my eye in this sort of category, I'm going to have to bring note to it because it's a statistic. It's a thing that's very important to me. Being a 2-time Scout Team Player of the Week at Saddleback Junior College, Saddleback College in San Juan Capistrano, California, being a guy who won the Effort Award in high school for my high school football team senior year, being a gritty dude who's played with a dislocated shoulder, being a guy who dislocated his shoulder in a Thursday JV game and played Friday. I know what it takes to be gritty. I know it's not the same injury, But one time my shoulder popped out during a pickup basketball game I scored. I hit 2 threes to end it, and I stopped playing that day. I know what grit is. I'm a gritty dude. But retroactively, I got to give this award to Zdeno Chara. And just because he played in the Stanley Cup Finals with a broken jaw. So he's not the first one to ever receive it, but he is one of the guys. And I don't want to say posthumous because I know that's after death, and I need to come up with a better word for it or figure out what word goes to an award of it's like a lifetime achievement award. The dude's played 15 years in the hockey. I know he's played with a torn ACL. I know he's played with a broken jaw in the finals, the Stanley Cup Finals. So Zdeno Chara, this might be the Chris R. Chara Grit Award. So this Chris R. Grit Award, the first annual, the first weekly, the first monthly, whatever it ends up being, the first sporadically awarded Chris R. Grit Award goes to Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, the fact that I'm hearing about this in June is kind of amazing, given that how fast news breaks. But Matthew Stafford played 3 or 4 weeks. So he did it in week 13 and played through the last 4 weeks of the season, 14, 15, 16, and 17, with 3 fractured bones in his back. I don't know if you've ever played football, and I know he played quarterback, but fracturing bones in your back cannot feel good. I've never done that, so he's for sure grittier than I am. And I know for a fact that would have probably taken me out of the sport for good, given my talent level. But Matthew Stafford played and didn't play terribly. Matthew Stafford's always played hurt, and sometimes it's been detrimental to his legacy, like the one time he played with the hurt finger and he couldn't get the same juice on the ball and they ended up losing. That wasn't his fault. He did what he could. And he was still their best option. So the first Chris R. Grit Award goes to Matthew Stafford for playing with a broken back, to put it lightly. So to close out the show, I want to give a shout out to Keanu Reeves with the popularity of John Wick and his 90s movies making a comeback in our modern day culture with the likes of Point Break, Speed, and others. Keanu Reeves has once again become a world-renowned superstar. He was just in a movie, and it was one of the funniest movies I've seen in a while. Always Be My Maybe with Ali Wong. And I want to say his name's James Park. He's a funny guy. He played Kim Jong-un. He played Kim Jong-un in The Interview. So that was interesting. But Keanu Reeves had an unbelievable cameo appearance in that. I think if you haven't watched it, it's on Netflix, and I know everyone has a Netflix account now. So that's my cultural take of the week. Watch Always Be My Maybe if you're up for a good laugh. It's about young relationships and finding your way back to each other. It's a rom-com. It's funny. It's got music. It's got despair, action, fighting, tons of comedy. It's actually one of the funnier movies I've ever seen produced by Netflix. But lastly, you got to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at ChrisRenneMB and follow us at MBasementProd. If you want to, tweet at me your favorite coach-player dispute or your thoughts on the show. I'll be using the Headliner app to create some digital advertisements for the page. Anyways, thanks for listening once again. This is your host signing out from episode 48 of The Chris Renne Show. Talk to you guys next week.